All right. We can get started. Yeah. Just a second. Let's move this from my screen. Cool. All right. Welcome to the Crisis of Manhood Podcast with me, your host, Peter Mukuka. Well, today we'll be looking at mental health, specifically looking at the police force. And I'm really excited to welcome Adam, who will be helping us to unpack this issue, which we see that it affects a lot of people, a lot of men out there who are suffering in silence. And so hoping that through Adam's story, we'll be able to learn and also to be able to appreciate how he was able to be determined and be able to come out of it. And Adam shares his story to empower a lot of people out there who may be suffering from or having issues to do with mental health. So briefly, allow me to just make an introduction of my guest for the podcast, who is someone whose courage extends far beyond the uniform. He's someone who has worked in the police force for over 23 years, and he's been serving diligently. Captain Adam Myers has worn many hats, and I believe that he'll take time to share a little bit about that. And also, he is someone that battled post-traumatic disorder, PTSD, as well as suicidal ideation. But today, he comes on this podcast as someone who emerged victorious. And you may want to also learn that through his experience, Adam has been able to come up with an initiative that he'll also be sharing a bit about on this podcast, which is Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma, which is really a movement that is giving a voice to the silent battles that are faced by men in the force and beyond. And so allow me to welcome Adam officially to the podcast. Adam, welcome, and thank you so much for coming through and for stepping up. Your story really inspired me, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation today. So allow me to give you an applaud for the work that you're also doing in Wisconsin, but I believe that it's the work that is also touching a lot of people out there.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me on the Crisis of Manhood podcast. I appreciate it. And I look forward to sharing my experience with others and us just talking about something that is not commonly spoken about. I mean, mental health is important, especially with men. A lot of men keep it inside. A lot of men don't talk about it. And I want to share my experience, not only with police officers and other first responders, but just men in general, to let them know that it's okay to talk about your mental health. You're not alone. Don't suffer in silence. It's healthy to talk about it. It's healthy to get help, and it's okay. There's so many people out there that's willing to help you if you reach out and you truly need help for your mental health.
Did you hear me?
I did not. No, I can see you now, though. Yep.
Okay. Oh, so sorry about that.
No,
So my question was, can you give us a background where you're coming from? First of all, maybe you want to give us your history. What was your inspiration to work in the force?
oh, sure. I'm from Wisconsin in the United States, and as far back as I can remember, ever since I was a little boy, I always wanted to be a police officer. I lived in the city of Racine, which is in Wisconsin, and we lived on Highway 20, which is also called Washington Avenue, and it's one of the main thoroughfares in and out of the city. And every time that I would hear a siren, I would run up to the window and look outside and hoping to see a police car. And the first time I saw one, I called it an car because of the siren, the noise, and that just excited me. It's something that I just was excited about, and every time I heard that siren, I'd run to the window. Now, the first time I saw a police officer get out of a police car, I was just in awe, and I looked at my parents and I said, an car man, an car man. I wanted to grow up and be an car man, a police officer. So I did what I thought was important. I graduated from high school. I went to college and secured a degree in criminal justice. And then I joined the Army active duty for 5 years, military police. And then once I was done in the Army, I moved back home to Racine and started applying for police departments. And I was blessed to get hired by the city of Racine Police Department, where I was born and raised, where it all started, where I first had an interest in becoming an car man or a police officer. So it was a dream come true. I still remember driving my police car in the downtown city of Racine area, and the county buildings have these very large mirrored windows. And I look over and I can see myself driving a police car. I can see myself in the mirror. And I thought, I'm really doing it. As far back as a young boy, I always wanted to be a police officer, an car man. And I'm looking at this reflection and thinking, wow, I'm really doing it. It's a dream come true.
Wow. Interesting. Can you hear me?
I can. Yep.
Absolutely. Oh, great. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story in terms of where you're coming from, but also, there's something about me, like when I'm introducing myself to people, and when I get the question, for example, like, can you tell us about yourself? And most of the times they talk about, my work, talk about the work I'm doing, all that stuff. And I forget to talk about, the side of the family. So maybe you can also tell us a little bit about that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I was married for 11 years to my high school sweetheart. Unfortunately, that ended in divorce, but we have two beautiful daughters. I have a daughter named Sydney Marie, who's 27 years old, Peyton Elizabeth, who's 23, and they're amazing girls. I'm a better man because I have daughters. I know I'd be a different dad if I had boys, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, I absolutely love Sydney and Peyton. They're great. And, growing up, as they grew up, I was just kind of the typical dad. I went to work. I raised my girls with my ex-wife, and we had a good life. We did kid stuff. We went on trips. We went on bike rides. We went to the ice cream store. We went roller skating. We had a good time. And now they're older, and they live about 3.5 hours away from me. But I get to see them many times during the year because it's not that long of a trip. But what I like to do now is I like to go out for walks. I like to hike. I like to kayak. I like to just do things that kind of test me and test my limits. And it's fun. I like history. And of course, I like doing what I'm doing in law enforcement and with my nonprofit, Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. But I'm just a normal, everyday guy. I mean, I'm really not that special. I'm, single dad of 2 daughters, and life is good.
Awesome. I think you and I share something in common. I'm also a dad to 2 beautiful girls. And I believe you who has older daughters, you can, I think I can learn a lot from you.
Yeah. And even when they get older, they still need their daddy. It doesn't matter if they're young girls, if they're older girls, they still need me, and that makes me feel good because I miss them. Yes. I don't get to see them every day like I used to, and so I miss them, but they still need me, and that makes me feel good. And they've grown up to be just incredible young women, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of them.
Wow, it's such a blessing. It's such a blessing, really. And did you at any point got to a place where you felt like you failed them? Where you just feel like I failed my girls in any way? Did you at any point in your life?
There have been times, because I left the Racine Police Department and moved up north and took another police job at a different police department. And there are times that I struggled with that, because I would see my girls struggle and be challenged by different things. And I always wonder how it would be if we just stayed in Racine and didn't move away. But as I got older, they became more mature, and we've been able to have conversations about that. And they're like, Daddy, no, it's great. If we wouldn't have moved up, I wouldn't have ever, been horseback riding or met the friends that I have now, or had the relationships that I have now. So that makes me feel good. But sometimes when I look at pictures from back then, it's, I feel differently. I feel like maybe I had let them down, but they reassured me that I hadn't. So I just have to go with that.
Yeah. Nice. Well, thank you for sharing your personal story, Adam. Really appreciate it. I think a lot of fathers out there would relate with what you're sharing about. And I think for me as a young father, that's one of the fears I get to have, like I have this whole responsibility to take care of these little girls and to help to make sure that they transition into adulthood in a way that that will honor God, because I'm a person of faith, but also to ensure that, I provide everything that they need for them to be able to succeed, and just to position them for that good life that they need, and, have to deal with those fears oftentimes. But it's good to see that there are men out there who are really taking responsibility to raising children in a way that, is honorable in the society. So thank you for sharing, really. Adam, so you there's something your story, what led to you starting your initiative. There's something that happened, so maybe you want to talk to us about that. What really transpired on that fateful day?
Sure. On Friday, April 8th, 2016, I was involved in a critical incident. I used deadly force on someone who had armed themselves with a hatchet and attacked me in a Walmart store. Now, Walmart is a retail store in the United States. It's a pretty big retail store. And this event happened on a Friday, which was 5:15 in the afternoon. Very busy time, hundreds of customers in the store. And I was at the police department, and I was just typing up a retail theft report when our dispatch center dispatched me to Walmart and just said, there's somebody in the store refusing to leave. That person is with a couple chaperones. They just need some assistance with removing her from the store. And it wasn't very emergent. We do that all the time. We go to people's homes, we go to businesses, we go to retail stores, restaurants, and basically show up and just say, hey, you're not wanted here, you need to leave. So it wasn't emergent at all. So I grabbed my laptop, I walked out the back of the police department, I jumped in my police car, and I started driving to Walmart. And as I was driving, the call became more and more emergent. Dispatch stayed on the line, and they were giving me updates. And they said, this person is still refusing to leave. She's walking back towards the sporting goods section. And now she's trying to remove a knife from the packaging. And the Walmart retail store in the United States is pretty much set up the same way. You have an auto center, you have a sporting goods section, and then the rest of the store. And I was thinking, well, if I enter through the auto center, I can stabilize her, keep her back in the rear of the store, and hopes that she doesn't walk up towards the front of the store where there's more customers. Well, as I was responding, dispatch advised me that she is now in possession of a knife, and she's threatening customers with it, and she's walking towards the front of the store. So what I did was immediately turned on my emergency lights and sirens, and then I started traveling at a higher rate of speed. And when I entered the parking lot, there were customers all through the parking lot, but nobody would get out of the way. Everybody's kind of looking like a lot of people do when you see a police car or a fire engine. They're like, oh, wow, what's going on? And I'm thinking, will you please move? There's an emergency in the store. I need to get inside the store. So what I did was I parked. Walmart had two entrances. One was the grocery entrance, and then one was a general merchandise entrance. So I parked right in front of the general merchandise entrance. And I turned my siren off. I left my red and blue lights going, my emergency lights, because I was thinking, hopefully if people were coming to the store and they would see a police car parked right in front of that door, they would decide not to enter. I was hoping to deter people from entering the store. So I exited my police car. I drew my duty weapon because I had no idea where she was. And when I entered the store, there was a man and a woman standing near the entrance. And I asked them, where is she? And they kind of pointed down towards the health and beauty or the lawn and garden department, which is a main aisle in the store. So I ran down there and I first made contact with her. Her back was facing towards me and she was making kind of a chopping motion. And I gave her some verbal commands and she turned around and faced me. And that's when I realized she didn't have a knife in her hand. She had a hatchet. And I gave her multiple verbal commands to drop the hatchet, to stop, because she kept walking towards me. And then eventually I ended up having to shoot her twice. One of my shots went in and out of her leg, and the other shot hit her kind of right here in the sternum, and she fell to the ground. Now, I know that when I pulled the trigger, I changed lives. Not only did I take her life, because she did die hours later, I changed my life. I changed her family's life. She'll never see her mom or her dad. Her mom or dad will never see her either. And I found out that at the time she had a 6-year-old daughter. So that hit home to me because I had younger daughters. That was emotional. So I just remember everything seemed surreal. I knew what I had done, but it just didn't seem real. And the gunshots were so loud inside the store. There were so many people around. And after I had shot her, I remember looking around to the customers and I asked them, please check yourself and please check each other, because I wanted to make sure that the 2 shots that I fired only hit her and nobody else was injured. And while they were doing that, I looked at a Walmart employee and I said, will you please get on the intercom and ask for a doctor or a nurse? If they're in the store, can you please have them come over here? And then there just happened to be a nurse down the light bulb aisle close to the shooting. And she said, I'm a nurse. So she came over and helped until the ambulance arrived. And I just, thinking back, I think I was in shock because, I lived in that community. I shopped at that Walmart all the time. And this wasn't something that is normal. You just don't normally go to work and do this. Even as a police officer, it is possible that you could do this, but it probably won't happen. But this was my reality. This did happen. And once everything was done at Walmart, my corporal, who was my training officer when I first started at the police department, brought me to his police car, and then we drove to the police department. And after everything was done at the police department, they said I could go home. And now I was still in uniform. I didn't have my gun because they took my gun for evidence reasons, but I drove home. I had a take-home police car, and I lived in that community. So I drove home, and I don't even remember the drive home. And I try to think of what route I took home, and I could probably tell you, but I don't remember it. But the first thing I do remember is I sat down in my police car and I grabbed my cell phone, and it was up in my visor, and I reached up and grabbed my cell phone, and I called my mom and dad because they lived 3.5, 4 hours away from me. And I wanted to let them know what happened. And I let my mom and dad know that I had shot somebody at work, that I was okay. And I wanted them to know right away, instead of finding out about it on the news or finding out about it on social media. I wanted them to hear it from me. And even later on, my mom and I talked about it. And she said, honey, you were in shock. I didn't recognize your voice. You're my baby boy, and I know you. And you said you were fine, but I could tell something wasn't right. So I remember after that conversation going home, and I was divorced, and my daughters were with my ex-wife at the time. And I walked in the house, and the first thing I did was I knelt down next to my love seat, and I prayed to God that she wouldn't die. Her name was Melissa. I prayed that Melissa wouldn't die. I didn't want her to die. I didn't think she was going to. All I was trying to do was stop the threat, because she was coming after me with a hatchet. And so I prayed that Melissa wouldn't die. And then I went into my bedroom and took my uniform off, and I remember sitting at the foot of my bed and I just felt so heavy. Even with all my gear off, I felt so heavy. And once I was ready, I went out in the living room and I ordered a pizza. And then I turned on the news to see what they were saying about the shooting. And it was all over the news. And I was told, don't watch the news because it might be triggering. It might upset you. But what do I know? I can listen to it. I'll be fine. And so I watched the news. And then after I watched the news, I went to bed and I slept great. I think maybe because it was a huge adrenaline dump. So I slept well. I didn't have bad dreams that night. I didn't have any flashbacks. And when I woke up in the morning, it was a Saturday. And because of my shooting, I had the weekend off. So I thought to myself Saturday morning, I have to do something normal, if that's even possible after you shoot somebody. And I figure, well, I'm going to go get my hair cut. And then I'm going to go pick up my kids from my ex-wife's house. And while I was walking out to my car, I looked at my phone and it was my chief calling me. And, I answered the phone and he said, "Hey, Adam, how you doing?" And I said, "I'm good." Kind of typical, "Hey, how you doing?" conversation. And he asked me when I could come in and speak with him. And I said, "Well, I'm going to go get my hair cut first, grab my kids, and then I'll come talk to you." And he said, "Well, I really didn't want to tell you this over the phone, but she died." And I respect his decision for doing that, because just like me, when I reached out to my mom and dad wanting them to hear it from me, he wanted me to hear that she died from him and not from the news, from social media, because it would have been on there right away once the word got out that she died. And I remember putting my phone down after the conversation and thinking, this changes everything now. Now I killed somebody. Now what's going to happen? And I had no idea what was going to happen. I just kind of had to go through the motions. And I did go in and speak with my chief after I got my haircut. And I barely remember even getting my haircut. But I remember sitting down with my chief and he said, "Well, Adam, we're going to release the police department's photograph of you, because every member of the department has a photograph of them." And I was probably thinking of a million things in my head. And the one worry I had was that picture was me when I was really fat. I had the chicken neck and I was like, oh, I don't want that out on the internet. Everybody's going to see it. And I remember even telling him, can you give me an hour so I can try to like Photoshop it and thin it up? And he's like, "No, we're not going to do that." So, yeah, that's what I was thinking about. And I don't remember the rest of the weekend. It was just a blur. And I've tried to recall what I did that weekend. And I think, and this is just a big guess, I think I just sat at home by myself and waited until Monday, because that's when I had to go into the sheriff's department and they were going to begin the investigation into my shooting. So that Monday morning, I remember driving to the sheriff's department and I was really worried, because I remember sometime, I think it might have been at Walmart, that somebody said that there wasn't video of the shooting, which I found it hard to believe, because another officer had a body camera when he arrived. I didn't, but Walmart has cameras everywhere. And then I started worrying and kind of second guessing myself in a way that, what if there is video? What if there is cameras and we watch what happened and it's not how I remember it? And we were able to sit in this conference room and listen to the 911 call and listen and watch videos. And it was exactly how I remember it. So that was a relief, but I felt like I was just going through the motion. I was still everything seemed kind of surreal. I mean, I knew I had shot somebody. I knew that I had killed somebody, and I didn't feel good about it. I wasn't happy about it. I wasn't proud of myself. I wasn't a hero. And that's what a lot of people said, and they still say that today. I'm not a hero. I did my job. I did real police work, and I don't second guess myself. I know I did the right thing. Under the same circumstances, I would have done the same. because I had been a police officer for many, many years. I mean, the shooting happened 2016. I think I had been a police officer for about 14, 15 years. So I had training, I had experience, and I know I did the right thing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. And
You're welcome.
to be honest, I know even just from listening to this story that this can mess you up. You know what I mean? Every time you
Oh,
think
yeah.
about the incident and all that, and maybe moving on for the next segment, maybe you want to tell us what happened after that, your experience with mental health issues, and what were some of the coping mechanisms that you had to go through before now, the Adam that we know now. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for that question, Peter, because I was a mess. I started suffering in silence. I had many different coping mechanisms. I have a different patch here I'm going to put on my vest, and it's alcohol, casual sex, and drugs. And I coped with alcohol, and I abused alcohol. I just didn't have a couple beers. I just didn't have a glass of wine. I do have a simulated wine glass here. And what I would do is I would make my own cocktails. I would pour a glass of wine. I would add NyQuil, or I would add ZQuil, or anything else that was in the medicine cabinet to make a cocktail for myself. And there was one time I even reached into the medicine cabinet and took my oldest daughter, Sydney's cough medicine, prescribed cough medicine, because it had codeine in it. And I poured it in there and I drank it. I abused liquor. Here's a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka. And I would drink this in 30 minutes or less. And then I would just be blackout drunk. I would pass out on the couch and sleep the day away. I was a bum. I was a drunk. I didn't care. I wanted to numb the pain. I wanted it to all go away. And it did. I mean, after you drink 700 milliliters of this, you get knocked out. You black out. You don't remember things. But that didn't make things better. It only made things worse. And there were many times what I would do is, before I would have to go to a special event, or even before I would go grocery shopping or just going out, I would stop at a gas station and I would buy 2 or 3 of these Fireball whiskeys, and I would drink them right in my car. I would drink 2 or 3 of these and I would toss the empty bottles in the back of my car or throw them out the window while I was driving to my destination. And I would do that right in the gas station parking lot. And I rationalized that it would take about 30 minutes for this alcohol to really affect me. And then by then I would be wherever I was going. And that's wrong. It's very self-destructive behavior. And another way I coped was casual sex. I would meet women online on dating apps, specifically to have sex. And it was mutually agreed that we would have sex. And sometimes we would meet and within 30 minutes we'd be having sex. And sex is fun. It feels good. It's playful. It's exciting. At least for me it is. But it's also something that you should be sharing with somebody special, somebody you care about, somebody you love. And that's important. And that's not what I was doing. I was strictly kind of chasing that dopamine rush and looking for that because it helped me escape. And there was one time I was laying next to a woman after we had sex, and I was thinking, you have to stop this, Adam. I didn't like who I was becoming. And slowly I did, but not as quickly as I should have. And I was always worried. What if I got a woman pregnant? What if I caught an STD? But even with that wasn't enough for me to stop. So I continued to do that. And when I mentioned drugs, I tried marijuana for the first time. And a lot of people tell me, well, smoking pot, that's no big deal. Well, it is to me, because all my life I prided myself in never doing any kind of drugs. But after my shooting, I smoked marijuana and I tried some marijuana gummies. And I always did that when I was so intoxicated that I don't remember feeling a high. But the behavior I had after my shooting, I just didn't care. I was looking for the next thing to numb my thoughts, my pain, my stress, my anxiety. And it may have done that momentarily, but it didn't take it away. It only caused more stress, more anxiety, more worry, more depression. And there were even times that I thought I ran out of excuses for going to work because I was cleared from my shooting. My shooting was justified, and I went back to work. And there were times that I would go to work and tell my chief, who was very supportive of me, my police chief, that I couldn't be there. And he would just say, go home, take as much time as you need. It's okay. But after a while, I felt like I ran out of excuses. So I had to start making excuses up. And there was one time during the 4th of July weekend, and 4th of July weekend, Independence Day in the United States, that I injured myself intentionally. I have a 12-inch crescent wrench, and I struck my knee several times to cause redness, bruising, scratches, abrasions. And then I went into the emergency room and lied and told them that I fell down the stairs and hit my knee on a manhole cover in my backyard that covered the septic tank. And they checked my knee with x-rays. They gave me pain meds. They gave me crutches. And they even gave me a doctor's excuse to get out of work. So after all that, I hobbled into work, and I told the chief and gave him my doctor's excuse and said, this is what happened. I can't work. And I'm ashamed of that because I lied to him. I lied to the one person at work that I absolutely know supported me. And I'm sorry. I mean, I was a different person. And I think the reason why I lied is because of that stigma. I think the stigma associated with mental health, that I felt like I had to lie, because how many times am I going to be able to go into work and say, I'm sorry, I can't be here. I don't know why, but I just feel off. I can't be here. So what I would do is I would start making lies, or I would go jump in my police car and go park behind a building or go hide somewhere so nobody would see me. That's not healthy. That's not safe. But I really truly believe it's because of that stigma that I figured that if I came up with lies, or if I just kept going, things would fall into place and everything would be okay and everything would work out. But it didn't. It didn't work out. And I just struggled in silence for many, many years, from 2016 all up until 2021, which is like 5-6 years. So it was a constant struggle for me. And there was one time, I have another patch here. There was one time that I put my gun to my head, and I never truly wanted to kill myself. I never truly wanted to die by suicide, but I have no idea why I did this. I don't have an explanation. And I try to find an explanation for this even now when I'm healthier, and I can't find one. And I have a complete replica of my duty weapon. It's completely plastic. There's no working parts, but it's a 40 caliber Glock Model 22. And what I would do is I'd remove the magazine and I'd rack the slide to clear the chamber, to take the bullet out. And then I would put the gun to my temple and pull the trigger, because I wanted to hear that metallic click. There's a metallic click when you pull the trigger. But I never thought that I wanted to die. I never thought that I wanted to kill myself. But how do you explain that? That is so dangerous. That is so self-destructive and irresponsible. And I did this at least a dozen times when I was intoxicated. So how many times did I do it when I was so blackout drunk that I don't remember? I very well could have forgot to take the bullet out, and I could have killed myself. And sure, people would have found me, and they probably would have thought, Adam was depressed. He's sad. He killed somebody. He was suffering, and we get that. But I never truly wanted to kill myself. I never truly wanted to die by suicide, but I have no idea why. I have no explanation. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm truly blessed to be here. I'm lucky. And I thank God for that. I am religious, and I thank God for getting me through all of that. And I truly believe he helped me get through that, because he has a plan for me. And this is what he wants me to do. He wants me to share the hell I've been through with other people to let people know that it's okay to talk about your mental health.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it at the time. And him and I had some well, at least I was angry, pretty intensive conversations. I wasn't happy with him. I was pretty pissed off. And I told him, I prayed, can you please not let me wake up in the morning? Or can you hit a fast forward button? But I had to go through all that so I could learn, so I could get stronger, so I could share my experience with others. And Peter, that's why I'm here today. That's why I'm sharing everything on the Crisis of Manhood podcast, because we're talking about it and because this is what God wants me to do.
Yeah. And thank you so much again, Adam. I think it's really such an experience, and I'm just seated here thinking about when you are going through all these the coping mechanisms that you are going through, or which you chose to go through. How were some of those close relationships that you had with people, not just close, but just people around you? How was that affected?
Very negatively. I self-isolated myself. I wouldn't come out of the house. When I had to go to work, I went to work and I did a good job, because a year after my shooting, I was promoted to the police department's very first detective, and I was doing well and getting medals and getting awards and doing my job well. But then being a detective, I would go to other critical incidents, homicides, suicides, fatal crashes. But I would isolate myself on my days off, or even the nights I would go home from work. I wouldn't communicate as much as I did before. My mom, dad, and sister live 3.5, 4 hours away. So it's really easy to hide what you're going through, what you're struggling with, when you live far away from those who love you. And they could tell something was wrong, but they couldn't prove it. So it was, it's not like they could hop in the car and come see me right away. And I did. I just kept to myself, and I was coping with alcohol, with casual sex, and those relationships suffered. And I've lost friends, and it's something that I still feel guilty and shameful of now. I remember one time I was invited to a party, and I walked into the party, and one of the officers I used to work with said, "Wow, you do come out of your house." And I'm like, that should have been a sign, but I just felt safer and more comfortable in my own bubble, in my own house. If I'm in there, I can control everything, and I don't need to come out. So I would isolate myself. I would distance myself from people. And one relationship that upsets me, because I was at a wedding reception, and I was drinking a lot of Long Island iced teas, and to the point where I couldn't stand up. And I went into the men's restroom, and I sat down on the toilet, not because I had to go to the bathroom, but because I needed some place to sit down because I couldn't stand up. And then I got on my Facebook account, and I started having a pity party for myself. And I was posting, nobody understands. I wish I would have called in sick on that day so I wouldn't have had to kill somebody. And my pastor, who has passed away, but my pastor reached out to me and in support. And I told him to F off. And I don't even remember doing that because I was so drunk. But when I read the postings the next morning, that's embarrassing. The pastor that confirmed me that I would see every Sunday at church, I told him to F off when he was trying to help, and that was hurtful. And I find it hard to believe that the people I worked with didn't know I was struggling. I don't think I was that good at hiding it. Maybe I was, but I doubt it. But I think they just weren't sure how to approach me or what to do, so they chose not to do anything. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that. And I think that has a lot to do with that stigma. I think they thought, if Adam needs help, he'll reach out, he'll ask us for help. But I love them. I love them guys and gals I worked with, because I worked with them for 14 years. They were like a second family to me, and they knew me. They knew my family. They knew my daughters. They helped me move into a new place. And they just kind of weren't there for me when I needed somebody. And that hurts, because there were times some officers would come into work early to come in my detective office and say, "Hey, can I talk? I had a bad weekend." And I'd say, "Yeah, sure. Shut the door. Let's talk." And they would vent to me about their weekend and about mental health stuff. But then when I was struggling, I just felt abandoned. And, I was terminated from that police department in 2022. What happened is I have another patch here. What happened is I had to take a 90-day leave of absence because I took a psychological evaluation and I was unfit for duty. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, acute stress with dissociative features, PTSD. And for 90 days, I was working on my mental health. I was seeing a therapist and doing other therapeutic things 2-3 times a week. And I was finally putting myself first and doing better and doing great. And after that 90-day leave of absence expired, I had a meeting with my chief. And this was a different chief than the chief I had during my shooting, because he had retired. But he told me, "We're not extending your leave of absence. You can either resign or we're terminating you." And I was thinking, why? I had never been disciplined. I had never been suspended. I received medals and awards, and this is work related. Why do I have to choose between resigning or being terminated? And I thought about it, and I chose not to resign. So they terminated me. And since then, and it's been about 3 years, nobody texts me, nobody calls me, nobody emails me. I've been completely ghosted by everybody I used to work with for 14 years. And that hurts, because they were like a family to me. And now I always question, were those relationships real? And I don't get it. It just really hurts. I feel like when I truly needed help, they just washed their hands of me, and like, Adam's not our problem anymore. And it's just really hurtful.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And I think a lot of people that are going through mental health issues, actually really, like, most people they get to a place where they seem like they don't care at all. But also I think there's a lot of lack of awareness for things to do with mental health, especially, let me even talk about this side of the world. In my country, I don't think that's something that a lot of people, pay close attention to. And that's something that we are kind of learning to say, oh, well, there's this, and people can go through this. And that's something that we really need to talk more about, to raise awareness so that people can know that mental health issues are real. And so, as you are talking about that, I know you've touched on you even when you are going through all that, and doing all sorts of negative, going through, or rather engaging yourself in all those negative vices as coping mechanisms. Every now and then you reminded yourself, like, you could see that you were doing something wrong.
Right.
Why did you find it so hard to come out of it? I know, reading your story, I know at some point you even wrote yourself a note or a letter to say, Adam, you need to stop doing ABCD. What was the main challenge there?
I did. It was like 9:58 in the morning, 2019, so 3 years after my shooting. And I had wrote myself a contract on a yellow piece of legal paper, basically saying, from this point on, I'm not going to drink anymore. I'm not touching alcohol. I'm done. I don't even remember writing that. So it must have been a good night of drinking, of having a good time. But something internally must have told me, hey, Adam, you got to knock this off, because you're going to ruin everything. You've always wanted to be a cop. Since you were a little boy, and you're going to self-destruct and lose it all. So that I did. I wrote that contract to myself, and I say it helped. It didn't really slow down the alcohol use. I mean, it took years to do that, but I think internally I knew something was going up. And I do see a therapist, and at the time I saw a therapist too. So I have a patch here. I see a therapist, police. You know, therapy really helps me. It helped me at the time, but I didn't stick with it. I remember the first time I went to therapy, and after 45 minutes of talking, it felt good. It felt great to get it out, to talk about it, to vent to somebody. But then when I left, I was thinking, that was a waste of time. She has no idea what I'm thinking, what I'm going through. Why do I even waste my time? So I would go for a couple weeks, and then I would take a month off, and I'd go for a few months, and I'd take the whole summer off, and I'd get letters in the mail saying, you missed your appointment. And I'm like, I don't need to go. I'm fine. But I wasn't fine. I couldn't do it by myself. And over the years, I got back into therapy, and I see a therapist now. I go weekly. Every Monday at 5 p.m., I'm sitting on the couch talking to my therapist, and she's great and she's helpful. I mean, another thing that I do is I take medication, and I have an example of that right here. Every morning I wake up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I grab 20 milligrams of Lexapro. It helps with anxiety and depression. And then I continue on my day, and it helps me. And it's okay. If seeing a therapist and taking medication helps you, like it helps me, why not? You know, I speak publicly to a lot of people, and one of the things, an example that I use is, you know, like sex. Okay, who here enjoys sex? If you had an issue with sex and you could take a pill and it would make everything better, would you? And a lot of people, they're not very vocal about it, but you can tell they're nodding their head, and the men and the women are both like that. And then I'm thinking, then why wouldn't you take a pill for your mental health? If it's helpful, why wouldn't you take a pill for your mental health? And they can they're like, wow, yeah, that makes sense. And you don't have to tell everybody that you're seeing a therapist. You don't have to tell everybody that you're taking medicine. You can do that in private, discreetly, and not go on a podcast like we are talking about it, or tell your family or your friends, but you can still get that kind of help. And if it's helping you, why not? It helps me, and I'm going to continue to do that as long as it continues to help me. So seeing a therapist or taking medicine isn't a bad thing. Not for me, it's not. It helps me. And I know many people from all walks of life. I know people, other police officers, people in the military, CEOs of big businesses and organizations, and pastors, and even people who are unemployed. It's more common than people think, but we just don't talk about it. And I think the more we talk about it, Peter, the more we normalize it, the better it's going to be. Because that's what we need to do. We need to normalize mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very important to talk about these things. I'm glad that you've taken a step to find time or to create time to talk about these issues, to bring people together and say, hey, look, this is normal. It's okay to take medication. It's okay to seek for support, to seek for help, and things like that. Now, Adam, I know we are running out of time. So would you be able to just share a little bit about like what was your turning point? Was there a specific turning point in your experience? Yeah.
There was. On December 28th, 2021, I attended an active shooter training at an elementary school, and we were watching PowerPoint presentations of different active shooters throughout the United States and throughout the world. And I had a panic attack. I was sitting comfortably like I am now, and I started feeling really, really hot, a knot in my stomach. And about a minute later, I wiped my forehead, and it was drenched in water. I was having a panic attack. And the first thing I could do, I thought of doing, I'm sure it's because of the stigma with mental health, is I have to fight it, and I have to hide that I'm experiencing this. And it would have been okay. There was about 20 or 30 other police officers there. They knew me. If I would have just reached out and said, I'm struggling, I have to go, it would have been okay. But I decided to fight through it and hide it, and I did. Completed the training, went on a couple of days off, and then I went into work on December 31st, New Year's Eve. I was working a patrol shift in uniform. I was a detective at the time, but I was working a patrol shift, and I started work at 11 a.m., the same time I started my shift on the day of my shooting. And I sat down in my police car, and I thought, you know what? I'm done. I quit. I'm not doing this anymore. And I don't think I wanted to quit being a police officer. I think I wanted to quit coping the way I had been for years because it wasn't working for me anymore. And reached out to a sergeant and I told him, I'm quitting. I need you to come with me to the chief. I'm done. I'm not doing this. I quit. And he's like, hold up. You're not going to quit. So we went and talked to the chief, and the chief and the sergeant were supportive. They sent me home. But in order for me to go back to work, I had to have a psychological evaluation. And I was all for that. And I remember scheduling that appointment. And then when I was driving to that appointment, I was thinking about lying. I was thinking about lying and trying to beat the test because I thought, you know what, I'm fine. I don't need a psychological evaluation. I've been working for years after my shooting. I'm good. I'm going to lie. I'm going to try to beat the test. So when I'm sitting in the waiting room, I thought again, and I thought to myself, Adam, the only way that you're going to get help and get better is if you're honest. You have to be honest. You have to be honest with these tests. So I decided to be honest, and I was, and that's when I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, PTSD, acute stress with dissociative features. And I have a copy of my psychological evaluation here. And when I got it back, I was reading through it and I started crying because inside this evaluation were all the answers to everything that I was struggling with over the years. So I was like, all right, let's go. What do I got to do to get better? How can I work on myself and get better? So I finally decided to put myself first, and I got healthier and I got better. And then after a year of getting into therapy and getting better, I thought, you know what, I still want to be a police officer because, you know, that police department terminated me. But I still want to be a police officer. I'm healthier, I'm better. I have a lot of training and experience most police officers don't. So I started applying at police departments and I ended up being hired. And I got hired where I work now. And shortly after I was hired, I was promoted to captain of police. So my chief now supports me 100%. He supports me speaking with you, Peter. He supports public speaking, podcasts, all that. And that's so important. When you know that your chief, when your supervisor, when your boss supports you, that's so important. And I'm only here because of that support and because I finally put myself first. As a police officer or a first responder, we always put everybody else first. We always try to take care of other people. Like you and I, we'll put our daughters first, our family first. But what about us? That's difficult to take care of us. It's difficult to help other people too, but you need to take care of yourself. So I finally put myself first and I got healthy and I got better. And now I'm still seeing a therapist, but I'm still learning about my past, but I'm stronger. I'm a better person, a better father, a better police officer, a better friend, a better son, a better brother. I mean, because I finally put myself first. I finally said enough is enough. I need the right kind of help. And that's not easy to do, or more people would do it. But it's so important.
Wow. Thank you so much, Adam. And I think for me, and maybe you would agree with me that the first step is accepting that you need help, that you're in a place where you need support. Yes. And I think that's something that you did, and you got a lot of that support. So even as we are closing, I know, of course, there's a lot to talk about, but I have to let you go. So would you maybe just share a few words, just in closing, where, just maybe it's a word, some tips or word of encouragement, any closing remarks to someone that is watching right now?
Sure. I just want people to know that it's okay to talk about your mental health. You're not alone. Please don't suffer in silence. We live in a world with the abundance of technology. And if you can't talk face-to-face with somebody because it's uncomfortable, because it's awkward, send a text message, send an email, make a phone call. If you're struggling, reach out for help. If you have to do it through your phone and you can't do it face-to-face, that's okay. But reach out for help. There's so many people, so many resources out there that are willing to help you, and people that want to help you, and not just because they're getting paid, because it's their job. They truly want to do that. I met complete strangers that hugged me and prayed for me to get better. And I'm thinking, I don't even know them. There's so many good people out there that want to help. And even if you're struggling and you don't understand what you're going through, say that. Say something's wrong. I don't get it. I don't understand, but I need some kind of help. Will you help me? And people will help you. And if you know somebody who's struggling, please reach out to them. Even a simple text, for example, somebody would send me a text, "Hey, Adam, I love you. If you need anything, let me know." That means so much for somebody who's struggling. They may not respond to you, but they still get your message and know that somebody's there. So please don't ignore people if they're struggling. Be there for them in whatever way that you possibly can, because it's important, and support is so important.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate. And before I let you go, Adam, maybe there are people who would want to get in touch with you. I know this podcast is also being viewed across the world, in the US as well. So there may be people that would want to get in touch with you. How would they contact you or your work?
You can visit Stop the Threat, stopthestigma.org. And on the website, you can email me, Adam at stopthestigma.org, or there's a telephone number there. You can send me a text. You can call me. Please reach out. If you want to reach out to me, I'll try to get whatever help you need. If I can't help you, I'll try to help you by finding resources for you. But, you're not alone. And take it from somebody who suffered in silence for years. You're not alone. There's so many resources and people willing to help. So visit the website and reach out to me if you need help, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Well, viewers, you've heard it for yourselves. Thank you so much for joining the Crisis of Manhood podcast. I was joined by Adam, who was sharing his personal story, his experience with mental health issues, and coming out victorious. And I think that's something that I really appreciate about that, is that the courage, the resilience, and also just being able to be bold enough to share his story, which is personal, I believe. So if you are going through you're going through mental health issues, you're struggling, please reach out. There are many places where you can get support, so don't feel alone. And we are all here to support each other, because no one is in this alone. So Adam, thank you so much once again for being courageous enough to share your story, and the work that you're doing with Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma is really amazing. And I know that you've already touched a lot of people's lives, and being able to come back into the force and to save the people that you love so much, because I believe that working in the police force is something that has to take a passion. You have to be passionate about it, to serve the people, to make the difference, to stop crime, and to make sure that our people are safe in the communities. So I want to applaud you for the work that you're doing, Adam. I believe that we will continue to get in touch, to talk, and to see about how we can be making a difference. Thank you so much, viewers. This has been the Crisis of Manhood podcast with me, your host, Peter Mkuka. We'll be signing out.